Hey guys, ever wonder how to install a large screen chart plotter on the handlebar of a Skidoo utility sled? We have a 2023 Skidoo Expedition. Follow along, see how we do it. Thanks for watching. How we're going to mount this GPS onto the handlebars is using a motorcycle, kind of a generic motorcycle mirror mount. They're a 8mm metric bolt, and they clamp on the handlebar, and they'll go on something along the lines like that. You can see we've got a flat that we could work with, a diagonal, and on some of the machines we've done down on the flat right by the handlebar clamp. Unfortunately, with the mountain strap on these LE machines, that isn't going to work. So what we're going to do is put our mirror mounts here at the midpoint of this diagonal piece. Then we'll just put a slight bend up on the angles. We're going to show you another machine that I did that on here shortly. And if you look back through the videos, I'll throw a link up here somewhere. It shows how we made that bracket and mounted it on that machine. It was, however, a much smaller GPS than the Garmin 93 that we're doing, the Echomap. Here is the machine that we put on the other Expedition LE that we're working on. This turned out fairly well. It's an older style GPS, but the one mistake that I made in laying it out is the distance between this bend and this bend is a little bit on the long side, and you'll see these brackets are kind of on the bend of the handlebar. I'd like those to be in just another little bit. So we're going to make a adjustment to how this is. Likewise, when we put the gimbal mount for the Echomap on here, it's going to stick out just a little bit further. You'll notice we've got the mountain strap spun around the other direction on this machine, and primarily that was done because the mountain strap was interfering. So on this new one that we do, we're going to put a little bit of a jog in there so that the mountain strap can stay in the original position. Personally, I like the mountain strap in this location, as does the owner of the machine. The only problem is if you run into something hard, you're getting the hard mountain strap in the chest, which isn't a whole lot of fun. This is another GPS mount that I've built, the mirror mounts, and we've got a riser that we added to these. And this is the Humminbird Helix 7 mounted nice and solid. And this machine was easy to mount to primarily because it doesn't have a mountain strap like the other ones that we did. And we were able to get in right beside the handlebar clamps. Makes a nice solid mount for the Helix. To lay this out, it doesn't have to be super accurate. We're just going to make some notes when we lay it out on the piece of aluminum, of course. We'll do a far more accurate layout. So starting here, we've got two of these brackets that are going to mount. I know, based off of the other one, that our horizontal needs to be 150 millimeters. That puts us midpoint with the ears that will be bent up. So that's going to be our start, and we'll call that 150 millimeters. We've got the mirror mounts on here just kind of temporarily so that we can take some measurements off there. And based on the other machine, I was seeing 150 millimeters across there, but I think we're going to do 130 here. We've got the handy little layout ruler, and we kind of lay it in between those two mounts, and 130 is just about perfect. You can kind of see where my thumb is here. We're going to come across and then angle up onto the mirror mounts. So 130 across there is good. Change the 150 to a 130. You can kind of see the basics of what we're getting here. Now, we want to make sure that we're going to clear the mountain strap adequately, and basically center to center on these bolts is going to give us lots of room. Nothing's going to hit. So what I want to do is we're going to essentially put like a washer type of arrangement at either end, and these are going to be 30 millimeters in diameter with the center hole here and here. So the back end of the bracket is going to align with the center of these holes. That's going to give us lots of room to clear the mountain strap. From there, we're going to come out along those lines, and we'll also probably put a fillet in here as well. So we've got lots of beef where the washer type arrangement is going to be based. From there, we're going to come out, and I don't have the bracket handy. It's back at the garage, but we're going to come out far enough forward that we can mount the gimbal mount for the Garmin, and it has just a little bit of a, it's kind of got a bevel to the front of it. And since we're going to be cutting this out of aluminum, we may as well put that bevel in so that it's nice, and there'll be a couple of mounting holes, kind of like that. That gives you the idea of what we're going to accomplish here, and now we just need to go back to the garage and make that happen. Here we are back at the messy garage. You can kind of see what I got laid out. I did this in Fusion 360. I can pretty much guarantee that you guys aren't that interested in watching me messing around in Fusion 360 to get it to spit out what I'm trying to do here. But hey, if you are, by all means, leave me a comment down below and I can try and put together some kind of basic tutorial how to create something like this. I've traced over it a little bit. That's why the lines are kind of messy, because the way that it prints out in this drawing is with these dashed lines that you can see over here, and I wanted a little bit more solid line to work with. What we've got here is these are tabs that are going to get bent up, and that's going to mount on the mirror mounts. And then here's the gimbal that we are going to put right about like that. That gets it far enough forward that the mountain strap shouldn't hit the screen. The way it comes up should leave enough room for the hand to get on there if anybody wants to use it, and should be functional. I took a paper template out and tried it on the machine last night, and it looks like it's going to work out very well. What we need to do, however, is we need to cut this out and then trace it onto a piece of aluminum. I do have a CNC router that we could be using to cut this out, but in past videos, people have made kind of negative comments about me having a CNC router and how do they follow along what I'm doing if they don't have one of their own. We'll use the metal cutting bandsaw that I made in a previous video to cut this out. Let me grab a pair of scissors, lop this thing out, and get it all traced. This aluminum has a plastic coating on it. We'll leave that on until we're done. I don't know how that lighting's going to turn out. It'll glare off the fluorescence. But we'll just trace around the outside of this. Not to be perfect, just want to do the best job we can. We're going to be cutting to the inside of the line. And there is our piece. I'm going to drill holes here and here. And that'll give us a nice radius to cut into. Rather than trying to cut around a tight radius, we'll just use a drill bit for those. And likewise, we'll have to drill holes at the center points of these tabs. Now, quite honestly, I am a little bit concerned that this is going to be a weak spot on this design. This is 1/8 inch 6061 T6 aluminum, so it should be fairly stout. Hopefully it will be decent enough to support the chart plotter. The chart plotter itself isn't that heavy, so hopefully this won't be a problem. If it does cause a break, well, it's an excuse to make another video and show you V2, which would likely move the mounting pad out and make these horns more substantial. But I think we'll probably have enough material here. The first cut we're going to do is just to basically cut a rectangle that the piece lives within, and then we can do the fine cutting after that. It's much easier to make fine cuts when you're not swinging around a 2 foot by 2 foot piece of aluminum. Now this thing is going to be fairly noisy, so we'll put some hearing protection on. Well, we might have to do some manual cutting. Drag the foot pedal over and step on it. Let me grab a drill, we'll punch those holes out, and then we can get to cleaning this up. So far I'm pretty happy with it. Unfortunately I can't read the size of that drill bit, but it's going to be the perfect one for what we're trying to accomplish. But so that we get a nice round hole, I want to start with a pilot size. So this is I don't know, a little bit bigger than an 1/8 inch. The reason that we pilot drill a hole prior to drilling out to final size is as you get into larger drill bits, you tend to end up with a triangular hole if you don't do a pilot drill. Now we'll cut those out and we'll see how the thing turned out. And there is our piece. Obviously it needs a little bit of cleanup yet. Still rough cut, but that's what files are for. You guys don't need to watch me spending half an hour filing this up, so I will go at it and bring you back when we're done. There's our bracket. Reasonably cleaned up. It's got a little bit of marking on the back side that we still need to wipe off with some lacquer thinner or gun wash, whatever we're going to end up using. Acetone would work as well. There's the piece, and there is our gimbal mount. It was on there and fits pretty well. What I need to do now is center this. So we'll mark the center point on the top, mark the center point on this edge, and we'll use some transfer punches to punch down through the slots and make the mounting holes for the gimbal. I've used these in a previous video, way back when we were mounting the transducer on the back of my Sea-Doo. What they are is a paralleled edge punch with a tip, and the idea being that they slide into the hole and hold your punch in alignment with the existing hole, and then center punch the underlying material. This gimbal's been installed on another machine. You can kind of see a little bit of a mark from the head of the previous mounting bolt, and we'll just line these holes up. It's basically center in the slot. Should work well. My masking tape's disappeared, so I'll just use a little piece of duct tape. Now I don't know how well it's showing up here, but there's kind of a casting line in the plastic that runs perpendicular to this back edge. So if we take the ruler and we do that, 130, so 165 millimeters. Is center. We're 180 across, so 90. Mark the edge, top. You guys can't see it, but I'm looking down over the top and I've got those lined up. I don't know, what do you guys figure? Does that look square? Looks straight to me. While we're center punching things, let's drop our template on there, kind of sort of center it. This bit's a little loose in the gimbal, so we can take it up one more size, and it'll give us a nice round hole to work with. Deburr the holes. We take a larger drill bit and just give it a little spin. Don't want to go too deep, just want to take the sharp edge that the drill bit pulled up in the aluminum when it was punching through. Swivel deburring tool has a bit of a hook in the end of it with a sharpened blade, and you just put it in the hole and swivel it around a couple times. It takes the sharp edge off. You gotta be a little careful of it. This tip can jump out and go scraping across the piece, make a big mess. We don't want that. Obviously, I expect the owner of this machine's probably going to paint this mounting bracket. I built a couple of these for him in the past, and that's how he usually finishes them. But we'll get it put together this way and have it ready to go on the machine. Gimbal mount is made. Now when we go to put it on the machine, I'm going to bring a pair of hand seamers along, and we'll just tweak the angle up on these tabs so that they line up with the mirror mounts on the snow machine. But I think for the most part, we are ready to roll here. Here's our gimbal bracket. It needs to go on the handlebars of the snow machine, and you can see we're still straight across, and we've got to put a bevel on here to match up with the mirror mount brackets. And the mirror brackets use a finer thread. If you decide to do this, you'll have to figure out exactly what metric bolt goes in there. Hand seaming pliers. What I have them for is building airplane stuff, but sheet metal tools, that kind of thing for ductwork. They also use these. And what we do, we'll come in, and I want to keep the bend as perpendicular to the back edge of the gimbal mount as possible. And it's 1/8 inch aluminum, so it is a little on the stout side. Takes a little bit of firm pressure. And since I'm using 6061 T6 aluminum, we don't want to be flexing it back and forth because this is a harder aluminum and it's a little on the brittle side. I suspect that we are not bent quite far enough yet. No, we are not, but we're getting there. As expected, we'll have to back these mirror brackets off just a little bit to get them in the exact right position. And as I suspected, we are a little bit overbent here now. I think that'll work. Let me grab a wrench, we'll snug those bolts up, then we'll snug up the mirror mounts, and our gimbal mount will be attached. That has our mounting bolts attached, and our mirror back is attached to the handlebar. And I was a little bit concerned about the flexibility, but I'm putting a lot of force on that up and down to get it to even move. Mounting bracket for the GPS fits into the gimbal mount, and I put the chart plotter in. It is a little bit snug to the mountain strap, but that gives you some place to rest your hand on, touch the screen, and also it shouldn't really block the vision when you're sitting in the riding position. Now that we've got the unit mounted, we have some wiring that needs to happen. Now this particular chart plotter was attached to another machine for last season. We're moving it over to the new machine for this year, and so we've already got a wiring harness that should do the job for us. To mount it, we need to take the instrument pod out of here so we can chase the wire down through and pick up. There's a starter solenoid and a nice ground point down by the secondary clutch that we can pick up that will power the unit. And we've done this several times on this machine. We set the windshield off well out of the way. We've got a T25 Torx that takes the retaining screws out for the instrument pod and glove box. I have to admit that the way this whole assembly comes apart is quite well thought out on this machine. 2 screws, that flips up out of the way, and now we can feed our wire down through there. We do want to be careful that we keep everything strapped up nice and tight here so that there's no possibility that this wiring is going to land in the secondary clutch. That would not be a good situation. We also want to make sure that we don't end up with a bunch of wiring hanging out loose on handlebars that could get caught on something when taking this through some back country. And we do like to ride these machines in back country. That's why we have 24-inch wide tracks. We'll trim these tie wraps off as flush as we can. We don't want a sharp end sticking out if we can avoid it. Cold weather and tie wrap ends tend to act almost like razor blades. They rip your hands apart pretty easily. That has the top part of our wiring harness complete. We can put the instrument pod back on. We've kind of got it, get it stretched back. There's 2 tabs at the back that it has to hook down on, and then it lines up with our T25 bolts. That has our instrument pod reattached. Can refill the glove box. We're ready to put the windshield back on here, but before we do, got to double check the grommets, make sure that they're good. This one was pushed down in from the last time we installed the windshield, and now it's back where it needs to be. Three grommets on each side that we need to get seated. And the windshield's back on. Now it's time to start attaching the wiring, and this is the point where you really need to disconnect the battery. On this particular machine, the battery is located under the 2-up seat. In the nice little enclosure, we've got this rubber or plastic cover over top, and we just need to undo the negative terminal. And we have to be careful not to lose the washer, which we promptly lost. We'll get that fished out of there though. And then we want to make sure that the negative terminal is not going to flip up and make connection with the battery again, because that basically re-energizes the electrical system. Put that back down in place, like that. And close the lid, latch it, and then put the 2-up seat back down without having to worry about anything getting caught. Around this side, we'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to be connecting this to constant power. These new Gen 4 machines aren't too bad about the where you get your power from, but the old Rev XU chassis didn't produce accessory power unless you were over a certain RPM. So if you just use the 12-volt power port to run a GPS, every time you let off the throttle, the GPS would turn off. Trust me, I know that. These ones, however, the accessories have power all the time. However, the most convenient place to get power from is right here, the starter solenoid. Underneath this red cap, kind of hard for you to see with the lighting we've got going on there, but under this red cap is a direct connection to the battery. Over here, we've got a convenient spot on the chassis that if we remove this nut, we can put the ring terminal under it and reassemble the nut. Gives us a good solid ground. And then we've got a nice solid strut, goes up to the top of the engine, and we can just bundle the wiring up there nice and tight so that it does not get caught up in the back of the secondary clutch. And while I'm thinking of it, got it in my hand here, you will notice that we have a fuse. It's cold in the building here, so plastic housing doesn't want to just slide apart, and I don't want to break it for the sake of showing that there's a glass tube fuse in there. You definitely need to have a fuse in the circuit as close to where you're picking up your 12-volt power as possible. In the event that a wire rubs on something and shorts out, or if the chart plotter completely has a meltdown, you're not going to end up turning this into a couple 1,000-watt element glowing in there on top of gas lines, etc., and causing a big fire. Fuses are very important. In the past, when I've been hooking these sorts of things up, I got asked the question, do you really need a fuse? The answer absolutely is yes. 12-volt power is disconnected. Somebody turned this nut driver into a really nice extension. Unfortunately, it doesn't want to let me get in at that screw, but it doesn't really matter which one of these bolts we take off. Put the negative underneath the head of the nut. This is a nylock nut. In any of the installation instructions you see for the accessories, BRP tells you not to reuse nylock nuts. But the rule of thumb in the aviation world is if you can't tighten through the nylock by hand, then chances are the nut is not going to come off. So yes, in a perfect world, we would be replacing that nylock nut. But since we don't have a new one, we'll just make sure that it gets snugged up good, and it definitely was not spinning on there by hand. Now this is going to be a little bit more difficult, getting way down in this little opening. I'm going to go grab another light. I don't know how well this is going to show up for you guys. These LED lights from Harbor Freight tend to wash out the picture pretty bad, but definitely I can see what I'm doing, and as much as I like showing you guys what's going on, me seeing it is the important part. It almost looks like you could pop that starter solenoid out of there, but we are up against the rubber boot now, and the nut is out of there. And we didn't even lose it yet. I want to bend this tab so that it goes down the side of the starter solenoid, so that the protective boot that keeps everything from shorting out can go back in place. Now I've got the wire on there. We've got to struggle to put the nut back on without losing it. This is a little bit tricky. We got it. Got it started anyways. Now we're down to the nylock. Got to convince this to tighten the rest of the way. This is going to take a while. I'll bring you guys back when I've got this nut snugged back down. We are all snugged up, finally. Fortunately, this starter solenoid, it can flex a little bit. So yeah, I was having to, turn an eighth of a turn, flip the wrench over to get it to go. Having that little bit of flexibility made a big difference. Got the rubber cap back down over top, protecting everything. Keeps crap off of there, but it also, since that wire is hot when the battery's hooked up, we don't want to have an exposed terminal that something could short out against. Now, I might get asked the question why we're not using the accessory harness that's built into the machine. The owner of this machine does want to put the USB charging port in the glove box and the glove box extension on, but that would plug into the accessory harness, and then there's a bunch of other bits and pieces that you have to get from BRP that are not inexpensive, that would be required to make the chart plotter and the charge port work at the same time. Now we've got our positive and negative. We've got our harness that comes down from up above. We need to secure everything well so that it is not going to get hung up. Now, this was installed in the previous machine in a similar fashion. Run this down and behind these hoses so that there's less of a chance of them getting hung up in the clutch. Since we've got a convenient cable to tie wrap to here for the positive, tie wrap that down, and we'll tie wrap the negative as well. And just to be extra careful, OCD, let's put a couple more tie wraps around this bundle of wiring so we know that it's not going to fall out of there. Okay, did I leave anything? Do you see anything that is going to get caught? Leave a comment down below if you think I've missed something. I think we're to the point where we can reconnect some power. We got the star washer out of there. Now we need to bring our negative lead back up. Battery bolt back in place. Snug the bolt up, and we are cover to snap back in place, which is a little stiff, but that's just because it's cold in here. Now we close the lid and the seat, and we've got a chart plotter that is turned on. So this is the 95 SV from Garmin. It's a 9-inch chart plotter. This is a fairly intelligent machine. It was able to figure out that there's no transducer hooked up right now, so automatically turn the sonar off. Depending on the model that you have, you may want to turn your sonar off so that it's not sitting there trying to transmit to a transducer that doesn't exist. This particular model though, that's not an issue. I have the 93 SV, which is essentially the same unit with US maps on it, and it does the same thing. It automatically detects that there's no sonar attached. We've got our chart plotter hooked up, and one of the things that you'll need to be careful of with this is, since it's hooked up to direct power, shutting the machine off doesn't shut off the chart plotter, and if you forget to turn it off and just put your screen cover back on and not realizing that the chart plotter is still on, you'll have a dead battery when you come back to the machine. device turned off. Take a quick peek around the secondary clutch. There are no wires hanging out there that are going to get caught on anything. And we'll fire the machine up. Put it in neutral and the secondary clutch will turn. Nothing seems to be getting hung up. We'll turn on the chart plotter. Takes a while to boot up. Agree, and there we are with the map. This map is not current because we're inside of a tin building and the GPS isn't able to record. But once we get outside in the beautiful, bright, sunny day that isn't happening at the moment, we'll be able to get accurate charts showing up on the screen. That's it, guys. That's, you know, other than a little bit of like the belt shield and the side cover, this job's done. I think we'll call that a success. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Hopefully you got something from this. Don't be afraid to try this at home. It's very simple. These mirror mounts are available on eBay. Chunk of aluminum to make a bracket. You saw how I laid it out. It's not all that complicated. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And we'll catch you guys in the next mess. Thanks for watching.